I watched Some Like It Hot. Weirdly, in the bathtub, I played it twice in a row, and the water kept getting colder and colder, and I was like such a prune.
Claire, I have not seen you in a very long time.
It's been a minute.
There was a period in the 90s when everybody in media was obsessed with you, myself included. I think you remember that period pretty well. You were in the So-Called Life, into Romeo and Juliet, and all that. But I have a little surprise for you.
Uh-oh.
It's underneath here. So,
Oh, wow.
I had Cameron Diaz on not that long ago, and we talked about, I'm going to let you look at that. And
Okay.
Kate Winslet is coming next week. But
Oh,
we talked
wow.
about this cover because I remember Cameron on the mood board, we had her with all her long, blonde, Cali hair.
Yeah.
And she didn't tell anybody she cut her hair because she did it that morning.
Well, I was short, so they put me on a chair. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
What I remember about that. But it's very faint now. It
Yeah.
was many, many lifetimes ago.
This
But-
was 1997.
But you know what? It was Annie, right? Obviously, Lebowitz. But that was kind of one of the first professional gigs I ever did.
Yeah, no, I so remember this and you coming in and then the phone and Kate Winslet. I had to be a stand-in for Kate Winslet because they were still in the middle of Titanic.
Right.
Now, you never guess. Do you know who else is on this cover?
I
Because you wouldn't have
don't.
been shot because we did the cover
Yeah.
one day and then the rest.
I
So
don't. I
it's
don't remember.
Renee Zellweger, Charlize Theron,
Oh my God.
Jennifer Lopez,
Ay, ay,
Jada
ay.
Pinkett,
Oh yeah.
Fairuza Balk,
Wow.
Minnie Driver. Yeah.
Look at your memory.
I know, but
Yeah.
you know, it's amazing. Look at all you. I'm interviewing you right now. Like I
Yeah.
said, Kate next week.
That's very
and
cool.
Cameron the other day, which is what I love about it.
Yeah.
Where you were doing great work then, and you're doing great work now.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
it's someone where, like I said, we were all just so crazy about you.
Well, thanks.
And then we did your other cover. I
Yeah.
remember the solo cover,
Yeah.
and it was like the vintage fashion.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, it's such a discovery. Oh my God, we're obsessed with her, and we're gonna bring her in. And we've watched you, along with ourselves, grow up and mature. And you play just always such great characters. And,
thanks.
Okay, so The Beast in Me.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to do a little light spoilers, right?
Okay.
And we're not going to,
Okay.
because I think it's so delicious. And there's so much that we're going to talk a little bit about it, but we're not going to ruin it for anybody who hasn't seen it. But what I did love is it was described as The Silence of the Lambs meets The Staircase,
Oh, okay.
which I think is pretty accurate.
Well,
in
we have a
terms of-
Welshman and an Antonio Campos, so yeah.
How you doing, neighbor?
I'm fine. You?
Never better. Where are you coming from?
Just running some errands in town. What are you doing here?
I was just out in the woods with my guys. The jogging path is all staked and marked, and I was hoping you would come take a look while we've still got some light.
Yeah, I would. I'm expecting a call from my editor any minute. I should really take it inside.
Is something wrong?
No. Why?
So Jodie Foster was going to direct this originally a very long time ago. We were in the depths of the COVID years, 2020. So she brought it to me and read the pilot, and it was wonderful. But it was also still a germ of an idea, you know. But I loved the milieu and the basic premise, and it felt a little Hitchcockian, and we eventually started calling it suburban noir. That felt appropriate. But she's this kind of unassuming, reserved, intensely cerebral writer character, and she's obviously going through a personal hell, right? But it's kind of quiet and also really very tense and taut and genuinely frightening. And I thought that was interesting.
I love talking to actors about their first read, right? Because you only get one first read, right? It's like that immediate reaction to something.
Yeah.
So When Jodie Foster, I assume you've known for a long time, obviously, she's got pretty discerning taste. So I imagine you pay attention when you get something from her. What was your feeling right after? Were you like, I have to do this? Did you have to sit with it a while?
It was
Did
just-
you know what was going to happen?
No, one never knows that anything is going to happen. Yeah, it was more the tone of it, and I liked this character who, as I mentioned, had these kind of contrasting forces at play. She was brilliant, but also, a kind of in her head, a thinker, but had this like roiling rage just beneath the surface. So she had, this, and I love this idea that like her darkest self becomes like incarnate in this other man. Like she's suddenly relating directly to her like shadow self. That was cool. And their dynamic, between these two central characters was really specific and fascinating, and it was just like really perverse romance in a way.
Oh, I love it. Okay, let's talk about that because I have that to talk about. I put that in my notes a little bit later, but I'm just going to jump in since you mentioned it. What I really appreciated is you had these, a male and female character that are so attracted to each other, but it's not sexual. It's not about like, oh, they're going to kid, what's going to happen? Is it, and obviously there's things that kind of put that up front so you wouldn't necessarily think it's going to happen, but they're drawn to each other's charisma almost. And like you said, she's this sharp edge, but also live wire. He's super sharp and unpredictable. And when they get together, they kind of are addicted to each other in a way.
Yeah, I think they're really excited by each other's minds. And they're immediately in a kind of antagonistic relationship. And I think they're both reluctant to admit how thrilled they are by the other. And, they're both incredibly isolated and profoundly lonely, born mostly of their respective circumstances. But I think they're also just kind of brilliant, and they don't find many other people in the world who can keep up with them.
Right. They don't have peers in their individual careers or even in life. No, I thought that was super special. And I didn't see the ending coming at all. I kept, in watching it, I was like, what's happening? Oh, my God. It just kept me engaged and wondering what is next.
Yeah.
And I love that it is not the, there's no obvious tropes in it. It's just really fun.
Yeah.
And smart. Okay, so Agatha Wiggs, the names kill me too, by the way.
I know.
Go
Well,
on.
for a while, Niall was called Cyrus, which is my eldest son's name. And I was like, time out, guys. I can't spend a whole season of TV. Yeah, that's just a rough association. So I requested a name change. But
but even though Niall Jarvis and you are, Agatha Wiggs, Aggie Wiggs, and of course I love Agatha Christie. I thought, I love that's a little throwback.
To that.
It's such a great name that you never hear, but love that nod.
Niall Jarvis. What if I could get him to talk to me on the record? I told you, he moved in down the street from me.
Yeah, and you said you already managed to pick a fight.
We've seen each other since then a few times. We've had these conversations, and he likes me. He's a fan of my work. He practically pitched me the idea.
Aggie, the Jarvis family is a fortress. He's never talked to anyone.
I think he's ready, Carol.
So she is a journalist, a writer, obviously very well accomplished, but going through tragedy in her life and writer's block.
Yeah.
Can't find any passion.
Yeah.
And it also coincides with like living in the suburbs. I loved all that too. About like you get out of New York and you are fucked. Only bad shit happens when you leave Manhattan. Everyone thinks it's the other way around, but it's not. But talk to me a little bit about getting into that world. Did you do any kind of fun research, or what was it like coming
there was
to
a
her?
book that I had read in college that I really loved called The Journalist and the Murderer by, she's a genius, Janet Malcolm. It's not very long, very digestible, and it's so potent. She's writing a profile on a man who is on trial for murdering his family. She earns his trust, and it's a kind of seduction. That connection was exciting. But yeah, I really love this idea that a writer could be really predatorial, and how our vanity will always bite us, and that was kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah, super cool. All the complexities, the moral quandaries that you're in every bit of it, and you really having a partner like Matthew. So I want to talk a little bit about him. How was that sparring with him, working with him?
Best. Just the best. And we had these wonderful scenes. It was just so much back and forth. It was a little stressful sometimes because, so everything hinges on this relationship. And there are thrills, but, there aren't chase sequences, we had to produce those thrills just with our banter.
You do run in it. There's some
a little bit. Yeah. I mean, it gets, we do provide some good TV ultimately, but he's brilliant and he's so dexterous and a lovely human. So it was just a blast, all of that.
And also his, she's very broke, and for him, it's like, can money solve all problems?
It can solve a lot.
Both of you are hiding something.
We both we spent a lot of time on our previous, our respective spy shows where we were doing just that. So we were pretty practiced at that.
Right. That's so funny. I didn't think of that. The Americans versus, so that's very funny too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very ready to rumble.
Very, very ready to rumble. So Howard.
Yeah.
And Homeland. We're going to go dive right in because Howard's also on this.
Yeah.
So what can you tell me about him?
That he really, really knows how to craft an episode and a season of television. He will find the hook. And that just holds you totally and utterly helplessly captive. So, yeah, he's just very gifted and very experienced. And it's also true that he had been kind of coincidentally partnered with another good writer friend of mine, Daniel Pearl, who I did a movie with called A Kid Like Jake, which was based on a play that he wrote. They have this great chemistry together, and both of their sensibilities were totally exactly right on for this particular show and this genre. But yeah, so.
Do you guys have a shorthand? Is it?
Yeah, it was so fun. And I had real history and intimacy with both of them. They're both very dear friends and collaborators. And it was wild that they had found each other. I mean, it's actually true that Daniel had visited me in Morocco when we were shooting the final season of Homeland. I got a lot of visitors that season because everybody wanted to ride a camel. So, and it just so happened that Howard was on set on the day that he visited, and they were talking throughout that afternoon. But yeah, so that was just a cool bit of kismet. And they were working on another project, so we were scrambling to produce the material needed. And so we were filming and really unsure of where it was going to go.
Oh, really?
And I was very comfortable with that because I spent many seasons with Howard on Homeland, just on this what felt like a runaway train, and they delivered us safely to our final destination over and over and over again. So, I had total faith that would be the case again. But that's what I mean. That's the kind of, I just was very relaxed. No, much more than all the other actors who kept turning to me thinking that I knew the secret, and the only secret I knew was that they really did not know.
Wow, I didn't realize that. So you didn't even know how it ended when it started.
No.
And none of the Matthew didn't either.
No, and Daniel had spent Thanksgiving with us. It was getting to be crunchy, and we really needed to figure that finale out. So we have a yurt in the woods that turned into a little writer's retreat during our downtime. So I'd throw him a turkey leg and come on, go get at it.
What have you written? Give me a page.
Yeah,
Give me
exactly.
That's
exactly.
so funny. But how great to work on that, because these things are, I think what viewers don't really realize is these are this is basically 3 movies. I mean, when, the amount of commitment and the time when you're shooting these complex episodes or hours almost an hour long.
Limited series are really tough. They're really popular, and I understand why, but they're kind of like the worst of both film and television. You know, it's like it's a massive movie. It's many movies in one, and you know, you don't have the privilege on a long running show of having established that infrastructure. You know, it's such a relief to, you know, have made those key decisions, you know, to have figured central characters out and created your culture, and it takes the edge off as you move forward. But yeah, so you're doing world building, and it's this wild Iron Man, you know, like beyond marathon even.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I mean, think about Homeland, 8 seasons, right? Or
It was 8 seasons, yeah.
8 seasons of that show,
Yeah.
which when it came out, and still is, it's one of the greatest shows ever. And I would say the same for Americans, right? But it felt very groundbreaking at the time. And I think about for your own life and as an actress, like I was just saying, like we felt like we kind of grew up together.
Yeah,
or we grew up
yeah,
with you
yeah.
and watched you grow up, and you were through the same thing. That you had a whole family. I mean, 8
Yeah.
seasons of that
Yeah.
show. It's
We're all over the planet. Yeah, it was intense. It was a massive undertaking, and it was my 30s. You know, like and we built a family within it, and Cyrus like literally grew up being held by Leslie Linka Glatter, our producing director. I mean, she would cradle him and behind the monitor, and he eventually was calling action and cut himself when he was like could talk, and you know it was.
Wow.
I have a lot of photos of him in ops rooms, you know, just like toddling around. A lot of
molding your
Yeah.
family life to your work is really challenging.
Well, now, you know, the trick is to try to continue making stuff we like, that we actually believe in, and also remain local, like stay put in New York City. Because, you know, I could live that kind of itinerant life when it was like just the three of us. That's
Right.
sort of manageable. One kid under the age of 5, just about possible. But now with 3, and the older they get, the more consistency and security
Yeah.
they need. And so that's
And
the trick.
critical. I mean, you grew up in New York City.
I did.
Right? And you're raising your family in New York City.
Yeah.
And I know your husband, Hugh, he was a Brit, but you
Yeah,
converted him.
I did.
He's living in Manhattan.
Yeah.
Was that a real decision? Because it's hard to raise 3 kids. And I mean, I don't know, you grew up in
We're
New York.
totally making it up as we go along. We've just been very, very fortunate. The equation was like script, director, cast, and now it's like location, location, location. The other elements are relevant.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just a different set of needs at play. But, you know, he's been doing Law and Order, which has been a real mercy, and he's really loved that experience. And it's, you know, that was my first job. It's every New York actor's
I
first
was just
job.
going to say.
Yeah.
That's a funny full circle
Yeah,
moment.
yeah.
Do you think, I mean, your parents were creatives, right? If I'm remembering correctly. Do you think you have a creative tribe, or you?
Oh, definitely. I mean, my parents are visual artists, but it's funny because people do ask me, you know, are there any other performers in the family? And forever I assumed there weren't. But then I did that show, Finding Your Roots, and my paternal grandmother, my dad's mom, died when he was 9. So I really didn't know. Claire, actually, is her name. I'm named after her. And I didn't know anything about her. And then I learned on this show that she went to Northwestern and got her degree in theater and wrote her master's on the role of dance and Shakespearean drama, and had directed plays and acted in play. And, you know, I started as a dancer as a kid. I mean, that's how I found my way into acting. That was just wild that there was this other woman who I am connected to. I had no awareness of. And she was interested in everything I'd ever been interested in. It was just really, it was actually very moving. But
Yeah, that's incredible,
Yeah, it
especially
was
since you
cool.
had no idea about it, and he had no idea about it.
No idea.
Yeah, I bet you out of 3, you get 1 for sure that
Yeah.
wants to be an artist or an actor or filmmaker.
Yeah, we'll see where our kids land.
I
but-
have 2 boys, and you just can't predict it. They come out as they are, hardwired,
Yeah.
and it doesn't really matter. I mean, obviously you have some influence, but not really.
Yeah, no, the case for nature is very strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I want to go back a little bit to the beginning because I think I'm just going to read some of these. My So-Called Life I talked about before. Little Women. Oh, Home for the Holidays. Oh my God, Romeo and Juliet. I remember Romeo and Juliet when you got cast in Romeo and Juliet, and it was just like, oh my God. And Leo, he was.
Yeah.
It's just that. What's that like for a girl and Leo at that point?
Yeah.
The two of you, you're like living through that was like amazing. Baz Luhrmann was setting it modern. It was so groundbreaking. It was so. Anyway, I'm from my POV. I'm much more interested in your POV about that. When you think about those roles, like what comes to mind when I'm saying all of those in that succession?
Yeah, it was a very intense time. I mean, we were all so naive. I was always very clear that I wanted to act from the age of 5 on. And when I was like 9, I was told that actually most actors don't make much money, and that concerned me. You know, I did grow up in New York, and I thought, okay, well, I'll be a therapist. Such a lucrative profession, but yeah, and some job security, and then do acting workshops on the side. But anyway, eventually said, no, there is no plan B. I am an actor, and I started taking classes at Lee Strasberg, went to this performing arts junior high school and met kids who were professionals. But it was so self-motivated. I just was determined to do this thing. And out of who knows why, but my
did you
parents
see
were
a
like
movie?
permissive,
Yeah.
but they and indulged it, but they did not. I mean, they didn't really do much in the way of. I mean, they would help me in whatever way they could, but yeah, I would just like rollerblade as a 12-year-old from audition to audition. I still remember like my wrist guards, Oh God, it's so mortifying.
Rollerblading, it just is such a time.
A very specific reference.
Yeah.
And then I started getting jobs.
I'm curious, at 5, was there a movie or a play or a book? Was there something you saw?
Yes. I remember the first, I saw Madonna on television, and I just was like flooded with this excitement. And I remember I started jumping on the bed. I was like lying down, and then I needed to bounce on the bed to like discharge some of that energy. And then it took me, I was like, I want to do that, whatever it is she's doing. And then I learned a little while later that acting, was specifically what I was most interested in. But I remember there were films that I would just watch compulsively. Like my mom would have to hide the tapes. This is when it was like the tapes.
VCR.
VCR.
Yeah.
But I watched Footloose obsessively. I watched all those John Hughes movies, especially 16 Candles, obsessively. I watched Some Like It Hot. Weirdly, in the bathtub, I remember, and I played it. I watched it twice in a row, and the water kept getting colder and colder, and I was like such a prune by the end. And I think I was like 6 years old, like I was a tiny person. Yeah. And then I watched Sophie's Choice when I was 9. Wow. And this was another era when
of course.
there
I'm older than
much
you, so
monitoring
it was
going
even
on.
worse.
Yeah, there was no censorship. It was just like, okay, yeah. That was profound for me. I was like, oh, right. That's what acting can be. That's what I really want to try to get close to doing myself at some point in some way. And
when you were at college, was there a moment you're like, okay, I'm going to go back in?
There was a point, like that first year I was, especially the first half of the first semester, I was a mess. I was terrified.
A lot of kids are, even if they're not.
Right.
Acting,
but I did not have a conventional high school experience, right?
Yeah.
Like I did not know how to write an essay, but I figured it out. And then after a while, my academic self started to become very developed, and I had like really drifted into another zone, and it took a little while to rediscover what had always felt so intuitive for me.
Oh, that's so interesting. Would you remember the first thing you did out of when you got back into?
I did the Hours while I was at school. I had a tiny role in that. You know what really, when I clicked back in, was when I did Terminator 3, of all things. Yeah, because there was another actor who'd been hired, and I had tested for it, and I was close, but this other it didn't get it. And then they did in fact say, okay, no, we do want you to do this, and I had like a day and a half to prepare. I had no time to like worry even. Suddenly I was just kidnapped by this production. There was just something so straightforward about the assignment. It was just like, just do the work, and it wasn't highfalutin or esoteric, or it wasn't fancy in any way.
Yeah.
It was just like, let's make some entertainment, and it kind of woke me up. And it really helped. It was like, oh yeah, I was so in my head, and it got me back in my body.
I remember that movie. That was
Yeah.
great. Also very physical.
Yeah.
It was a total kind of departure.
Yeah.
And something you hadn't done before.
Yeah, and I think because it was so like anomalous for me, like it just, I don't know, it helped. It really helped.
Yeah. I've always admired you as an actress because it's just like the emotion behind, without it, you're able to communicate so much without any words.
Oh, thank you.
That
Thank you.
emotion, we're living in that world with you. And I think it's perfectly encapsulated in this Aggie character that you're doing now, because there's so much going on inside, but we're feeling a part of it because you're able to like do that. And that kind of, I love the parallel of her isolated in suburbia and Claire being in, we can't get you out of New York City.
Nope. Not until my kids graduate from high school.
Yeah.
Then I can
Then maybe
go
you'll
gallivanting
retire
again.
or gallivant around. Okay. So now I'm going to go to some of the questions that I can call them my favorite questions
Okay.
that I ask everybody.
Okay.
And the first one is about birth order.
Oh, okay.
So what do you think about your birth order informed who you are as an adult today?
Ooh. So I have a brother, Asa, who's 6.5, almost 7 years older. So we both kind of had turns of being only children. And, oh, God, I worshipped him when I was young. I mean, worshipped. And he wanted to have nothing to do with me. I mean, that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
That's the dynamic. And we're very different kinds of people. But I think I probably was very privileged by that. Like that was a great advantage because he provided this like umbrage. He's also 6'5". He's this massive dude.
Wow. My dad was 6'5". There's not a lot of 6'5".
No. And I mean, my dad's 6 foot. I mean,
Yeah.
my mom is, I don't know. How did that happen? But so I think it gave me cover in some way but I remember he was so big, and it didn't take much for him to kind of physically intimidate me or knock me around. But I did have this like ability to cry on demand. And I exploited it. So yeah.
When did you discover that was a secret skill?
Probably then. Yeah.
Out of necessity?
Born of necessity. Yeah.
Do you have any irrational fears?
Rats.
Yeah.
And I would say they're not irrational. I think they're very rational. One time,
Well, New York. I mean,
yeah, New York. And I was living on Worcester Street, which was like, this particular block was like particularly infested because there was an abandoned building and a parking lot, and there was like cross rat ventilation. It was really gross and bad.
It's like an ocean on the floor.
It was
You're like, why?
so bad. And I remember I was in therapy and I was talking about my fear of rats, and she said, maybe it's the needy part of yourself that, and I was like, do you have rats on your block? And she said, no. And I said, yeah. So
Nothing about being needy.
You'd think that more exposure would sort of reduce your fear, but I find no, it's the other way around. I'm really terrified of rats, but I'm also terrified of cockroaches and ghosts, and those are all things that start coming alive at night. And when you see one, you know there are many, 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 many more lurking. So
I was
maybe
gonna
there's
say
a
rats, cockroaches, and ghosts. Did you say? Yeah, there's a lot of them in New York.
yeah. A lot of all those things in New York City.
A lot of
and that's
all
why
of
I
those
love
things.
to live there.
You push through it because that's amazing. My other question is core memory, and we kind of talked about a lot of memories, which are great. I love that they come so quickly to you. Is there a core memory that you have that kind of defines you or defines a moment in your life?
I have a lot of very ancient memories, and who knows if they're actually real, but I have pre-verbal memories. I was on my kitchen island, seated on the island, and my mom, I wanted to get to the counter, like on the other side of the kitchen, and I was trying to communicate this to my mom, and was limited. I had only a handful of, was somehow not able to manage it. And my mom was saying, I want to understand. She couldn't figure it out. She couldn't crack it. And she was like, I want to understand what you're saying. And I just thought, like, poor us. Like, I've got to figure this out. Like, I gotta just, like, crack this language thing, because this is ridiculous. This is taking way too long. I remember that. And I also remember we had a swing in our loft, and we had these really big windows, and the greatest joy was swinging. It felt like you were like fly out into the city, and we got a lot of light. It was like flooded with light, and just swinging and swinging and swinging and swinging. That is my happiest of places.
That's amazing that do you swing? Have you ever been on a swing now? And do you?
Well, when I then got to make my own loft, my like bachelorette pad on Worcester Street, I built it from scratch, and the only thing I knew I needed was a swing. So I had a swing for a long time, and it was fabulous. And I don't have a swing now, but Hugh got me like a hanging chair, which is like a version of it. There always has to be some nod to a swing wherever I am.
All right, I have one last question. Is there any movie you obsessively watch with your kids? Like I think about the ones you were just saying.
Well, we watched a lot of Miyazaki. And we just tore through the canon, and everybody loves it. And so that's been good. Oh, you know what? Uncle Buck. That is a great movie. It's
classic.
It's classic. And then I'm doing a project with Ed Solomon, and he wrote Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and so I thought, we should watch that. That really holds up.
Some of our movies that we used to watch you're like, 16 Candles. You're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much now.
Yeah.
Then you didn't
What
even
were
think
your
about
family
it.
movies that you watched over and over again?
We did a lot of the Pink Panther. My dad
yes.
loved the Peter Sellers.
I love that
Pink,
too.
That was on Laserdisc, where my dad had these Laserdisc, and he loved the Pink
And
Panther.
Pavlova of the Parallel Bars.
Yeah.
That's Anyway.
Those were always a classic. And then my mom was like My Fair Lady and things like that. But I was really the more movie person out of my family. They're pretty great. It's great to see you, Claire. Thank
Nice
you
to
so
see you
much.
too.
It's so fun to catch up.
Yeah, you too.